what are all major components that are involved, and what are the interconnections, what are the failure situations while we are architecting a production grade multi-agent in distributed systems. So the core idea of this understanding is, so when we are designing an AI system where multiple specialized agents work together reliably, especially in production environment. So these pipelines are involved with distributed system principles. Then how the importance when we are architecting the entire system design. So what is the overall architectural mindset? And without this perspective, the teams, if they start building or demoing the production systems, and you see there is some disturbances, or if something got failed intermittently, then that would be an impact to the another result. So we need to take care. The whole idea is to how are we contributing the system very efficiently? How are we building the system very efficiently? So to build such a multi-agent system at a scale, and with a good recoverable and having such kind of observability and security, which can fit to the enterprise use. So the use case could be scale to 500 users or 1,000 users within enterprise, or you might expose this tool to outside the users, but none of the users should experience a failure intermittently when it is across a distributed system. So we need to take care how are we designing this, and let's see the components, let's see the foundation, how it works. So when it comes to foundation, so at a foundation level, so let's define a distributed system problem. Okay. And what is a difference between single process, multi-agent trade-offs? Okay. And what is an agent and what is its responsibility? Okay. Agent roles and responsibility. And so we'll walk through a reference architecture. Okay. So we'll understand at a foundation level, we'll understand all these concepts, and we'll also try to understand how are these concepts interconnected to the other components. Okay. Similarly, at a foundation level, we have so and so concepts, and we'll see the next level when it comes to the core components. So in core component, the very primary thing is we need to understand how the workflow orchestrator is working, and how it is distributing the task, the workflow orchestrator. And this is what the primary thing which is very important. And there is something called agent registry. Agent registry. Okay. And in this core component, there is also something called a shared state store. Okay. I'm trying to point out all the core components and then how are we communicating with these core components. So I'm trying to bring all the flow chart and inside each component, I'm trying to point out different concepts and we'll discuss the connectivity among these concepts. There is something called immutable event law. When it comes to immutable event law, there is something called tool. If you are connecting with MCP server, there is something called tool. And if it is something called, if you are implementing using land graph or land graph to identify the states and manage the memory, then you need a memory layer for this. Okay. Then definitely we need to take care of security and governance. Okay. So now we defined the foundation and we defined something, all the components under the core, okay, especially with the orchestrator. Now we have something called, we need to communicate among these, okay. Communication and coordination. So when it comes to communication and coordination, so we need to understand what is the difference between, so the major component, major core component is orchestrator. So we'll understand the difference between orchestrator versus choreography. What is the primary difference between these? And will come the difference, will understand how agent to agent protocols runs. Then there is some task, okay, and it should delegate, okay. So task delegation, and if it is executing, it should hand off the task. So hand off, okay. Then if you're, as I discussed, there is something called memory layer and there is something called tool layer. So if you are having with MCP model context protocol, MCP. So how are you connecting to this? Okay. Then you will definitely have something data or schema validations, something like that. Okay. Now, in all these situations, you are trying to coordinate and communicate from one layer to the another layer, and you're validating if you're fetching the data, you're trying to validate the schema. If you're executing something or inserting something, then you also validate the schema before you do the insertion job. So you have several activities, and if there is something that needs to be delegated, then you delegate based on the agent to agent protocol. So there are several things. So this is how you coordinate and you communicate. Okay. Now, other than this, is something that you have to manage, okay, with respect to state and memory. State and memory. then how are you going to manage this? Okay. So in state and memory, there are different methodologies and different ways to store the state, to store the state and memorize back with the conversations that those are frequently happening from one agent to the another agent, or if you call it as a chatbot. So the user starts questioning, and user is trying to question or get a response from the agent if the chatbot works on agent mode, or if it is some kind of questionnaire chatbot. Okay. So the intent classification and the LLM response with the intent classification should be always being in sync. If something is missing, then the conversation will deviate and the user will never being a track of the intent, what is he looking for, and the agent will never respond as per the user intent. So definitely we need to take care of the conversation which is always in sync. Okay. So for this, you definitely need something called state and memory management, especially for that particular instant or the session that is running upon the whatever the application that you built upon. Okay. So there is something called a short and long-term memory. Short and long-term memory. Then there is something called semantic and episodic memory. Then, as I mentioned that there is something called immutable when it comes to when it comes to the core components. So there is something called shared mutable. Okay, state risk. Okay, then you have memory pollution and privacy. Okay. So these are something related to state and memory management. Okay. Now, after this, there is something related. Now you are managing the state and you are managing the memory and you are having the proper conversation happening with respect to the user intent. Now, this is a happy scenario, right? So now, when this is a happy scenario, then you definitely require, if it is not always a happy scenario, then you need to take care the fallbacks or the recovery or the retry logic that is in place so that user is never felt, um, you know, um, user is never observed that this is not falling as per my intent. Okay, so there should be some kind of logic in place where while the query is getting executed based on the user intent, is always being reliable. Okay. So how do you manage that? So let's have another component, that is reliability and execution. So in this, there are something called error recovery and retries, which is very important. Okay. Then you have checkpoint. Okay. Checkpoint is always your recovery to the state where it is stored. Okay. And there is something called a breaker. Okay. Something got breaks, then the execution should be very proper so that user is never there should be a proper fallback in place so that user is never disappointed with the response coming from the agent. Okay. Now, after this, you will definitely for every application we need to take care, especially when it comes to AI systems, you should definitely take care of operational, whatever the protocols that you follow at the operational level, something like, observability, like tracing the logs, okay? So logs, okay? And generative metrics, and then traces at every log. So you need to maintain this as a standard protocol, and then you should get the accuracy of the response, whether it is how, like generally, I can call it as evaluation. So you need to have evaluation and success rate. Okay. And definitely before calling LLM, you should have your guardrails, okay, to protect your sensitive data. And what if the intent itself is PII data? So how can you handle it? Okay. So definitely, as I mentioned, reliability with execution, you should have something retry logic in place. Then you should go with this. Okay. Policy and production failures. Okay. So these are the things that you need to definitely take care. And when it comes to implementation part, what kind of frameworks are you using? Are you using LangGraphs or AutoGen or Crew AI? Or if it is coming to infrastructure, so either you might go with, there is something called agentic infrastructure that is nothing but temporal agents. And either you might go with the Docker, regular deployment, CI/CDs. Okay. So these are the regular things. Okay. But the core components are something at a foundational level. We'll understand these components and interconnection with respect to the core components, communication, and how are we coordinating from the one concept to the another concept, and what is state and memory management. Definitely, these are the very pretty common things that we need to take care. Now, let's come to distributed systems. So the definition itself says that when it comes to distributed systems, so while we designing, okay, the situation where we are calling multiple components, okay, running independently and must coordinate the state, handle the failures and recover should be very correctly in place. So that means when it comes to distributed systems, especially when it comes to agentic kind of distributed systems, so you have what kind of flowchart you have. So you have user query coming from your application, and then you have some intent classification, okay, an agent sitting to classify the intent, and then you have retriever, okay, retriever service, okay, to retrieve the documents or whatever the corpus that you have built based on your RAG. Okay, you can add a retriever service, and you have your vector database to feed all the embeddings from the textual information or image data that you have, that you are trying to build your corpus. And then you have something LLM reasoning agent based on the user intent coming, okay? Or you can have your MCP tool calling here to fetch the relevant information. Or before MCP calling also, you can have your LLM reasoning agent, and you can have your tool agent, which is MCP calling multiple APIs, okay, based on the user query. And you have your, let us think, okay, you can place your guardrails, okay, before you uh, send a response to the user, okay. You have your guardrails in place, okay, and then you will have your final response. Okay, so these are the, so none of the service So let's assume all these are service. Okay. So none of the service should break in between. If any of the service is breaking, okay, in this distributed pattern, because these should work independently. If any one of the service or any part of this system fails, okay, you should definitely have a proper fallback, proper retry logic in place, and proper loggings to trace where it is getting failed, why it is getting failed, and you should have that recovery mode at very instantly. Okay. So a distributed system in a group of independent services or a machines that communicate over a network, okay, and work together to complete as a one system. So that is known as a distributed system. And when it comes to which is in agentic mode, we should be very careful because one service is purely depend on the response or the output to the another service, because that is going as an input to the next call, or the decision is taken by that particular output, okay, which is going as an input. So this is the primary fundamental thing that we need to take care. Now, what is the difference between a single agent and multi-agent? Okay, the comparison between using one agent versus multiple agents is the goal is not to send a response. The goal is to decide whether the problem really needs a multiple agents or not. If it is required multiple agents, so instead of instead of we over engineering, we want to take care the workflow with a multi-agent orchestrator so that it depends on the task complexity and at the same time the specialization it needs, the latency or the workflow batching. How are we batching the workflow? So if it is a multi-agent, then the decision should be very proper, having input or output coming from one agent to the another agent. Okay. But if it is a single agent who is trying to take a decision or coming out with a decision, so it should have a now you really don't require a multi-agent orchestrator which can take multiple decisions or multiple outcomes. But if it is a single agent, you need to show the response in a better way that user is trying to satisfy with a single LLM call. So, and the intent, when you're classifying the intent, okay? So when you classify this workflow orchestrator will try to orchestrate the workflows. So when you're trying to classify the intent, okay, especially when it comes to okay. So when it comes to intent classification based on the user query, okay, so that should show a proper routing by managing the memory, by targeting the proper node based on the state or based on the user query. So it should provide a good response to the user. So if it is a single agent, if it is a multi-agent, then the decision can be fallback. Okay, so that's where the multi-agent necessity might come. Okay, depends on the use case, but you can have a single agent or multi-agent at the same time. Okay. Now, what is an agent and what's the role and responsibility of an agent? Okay. So agent is something that can take some decision. Okay. So it is a clear definition of what agent is supposed to do. Okay. What tool it can use or what is the output of what it is trying to produce. So the agent can be any of or the combination of all these situations where the goal is to avoid the confusion or duplicate the logic or overlapping the decision making. Okay. So the goal is to avoid all these things, and the importance of an agent is it should coordinate, it should take some ownership, it should have the debugging nature to while it is producing an output. Okay. So in overall, whenever it is trying to execute, Okay, the agent is trying to provide a response. Okay, so it should have a proper business workflow decision. Okay, at that particular instant. So that's it. That's a agent role and responsibility. Now, Now, when it comes to a standard reference architecture, so we can reiterate the design, or we can have a different different architecture. That doesn't matter. But let's come to a general production grade architecture based on this user query and intent classification. Okay. So how do you design a a regular architecture? Okay. So you, as I mentioned, that there is an user query. Okay. Or you can call this as business workflow layer. So in this business workflow layer, let us take an example of something related to loan loan executor. Okay, somebody who is going to approve the loan, and now you are trying to you are an applicant, and you are using the portal, and you are trying to apply for a loan, and somebody has to approve the loan. Okay, now this is a common application. Okay, loan. Okay. So now let us think, this is a common use case, and now as a user, you're trying to utilize this portal. Okay. Now there is a loan officer who is going to take a human review after this decision coming from an agent. Okay. So as an application, you're using this application portal, and the user is trying to upload all the necessary information. Now, as soon as you open this operation dashboard, you have some API layer, okay, and you have some security layer, okay. In this API layer or security layer, what happens? You will have an API gateway, and you will have rate limit. You will have all input validations. Let me write it on the side. Here, loan officer, loan officer or application portal, or you can also call this as operational dashboard. Okay. So at the same time, you have your application layer. In this application layer, you have API gateway. Okay. Plus this will try to auth. Okay. And you have some set of rate limit. You set it some rate limit, and that's a rate limit to protect your application at the same time. And as soon as they provide some inputs, you need to validate the inputs. So this is the very first step that you're going to take for any regular applications, not only for the agentic application, but any regular application. Now, here comes multi-agent. Okay. Multi-agent orchestrator. Okay, layer. Now in this multi-agent orchestrator layer, what it is going to do? So you might be having several agents. One is planner. Okay. And next is someone, it should execute based on the planning. Okay. One after the other, execute. Okay. And then you have handoff, and you have handoff means you are trying to, it is after executing, it is trying to provide a call to review, human review, and a human is trying to approve it. human approval. Okay. And then while human is trying to approve, he has to route it to policies. Okay. He has to route it to policy routing. Then he will verify with the policies. Okay. Now, then what is the next step that it's gonna do? Okay. There should be some specialized agent. Okay. Specialized agent layer. I'm just calling it a specialized agent, or you can call it as a validation agent layer also. Okay, that's not a problem. Naming could be different, but just understand the flow. How are we deciding one after the other? So this agent, when you are routing the policies, okay, at the after human review, so human he may not have that much of time. That's where we are trying to bring down the time to get the loan approved, right? As soon as the application intake happens. So you do not have that much of time. As a human approval, now he's trying to route to the policies. Okay. Now you need a agent where once it is got routed to the policies, it should understand the different sections of the policies, or you can also try to understand before approving a loan. There are different departments. Now you need to understand that you need not to wait, or you need not to forward the documents from one department to the another department. For example, if you have 10 different departments, okay, one, two, three, four, okay, four, and so on. And at the end, you have 10th department, okay. So you call different departments. Okay, that's fine. So now you need not to wait for each day, or there would be some wait time for each human review for each day. So ideally, if the loan is going to approve, then ideally it should take 12 days. Okay, 12 days. If anything is getting blocked with the manual review, then this number of days is going to extend. Now we need not to wait for this 12 days, or each department is trying to take 24 to 48 hours to approve. If something is if somebody is absent, or if there is no reviewer, then it's going to waste their time, right? So we want to bring down this 12 days to 1 day. Let us assume. Okay. Now, as soon as somebody has uploaded all his documents, or okay, the loan officer is trying to upload into a portal. Now it should validate very instantly, and it should route to these policies to the different departments very instantly. So then and there itself you get the conclusion. Or if this is a user application, user he himself should understand based on his credit score or whatever the score. So he himself should understand what is causing the blocker to approve the loan then and there itself. Okay. So that is a kind of system, let us understand. Okay. Now this specialized agent, what it is trying to do after you routing the policies. So you have your documents. Okay. User documents, intake. Okay. Now you will have your income verification. Okay. Then you have your credit. Then you have your whatever the fraud. Okay.
Yes, I'm petition.
Have your fraud, and then you have your complaints check. Okay. And then you will also understand the risk, and then you will have your approval. Okay. So these are the steps the specialized agent should understand and execute. So multi-agent orchestrator, here you have something called planner, which will plan based on the inputs. Okay. And execution is something that it will, as per the plan, as per the inputs, it will try to execute one after the other. Okay. And handoffs is something that it will try to hand off to the human approval. Policy routing is something that if human is trying to do an extra validation for routing the policies, or before the during the execution itself, if you want to parallelly do the policy checks, you can also agent will try to do that, but at the same time human, if he wants to do a additional policy routing, he can do that. Then at each multi-agent layer, you have a specialized agent who will try to review at every step from the document intake, income verification, credit, fraud, everything. Okay. So this will provide an overall summary. Now, the actual things comes when it comes to especially when it comes to a agentic layer. So the very special thing comes here is something that state less memory less durable time. So these are the three important factors. Now, what are these three important factors doing here? Okay. What are the three important factors doing here? So the very first one, state is nothing but workflow state. Okay. Workflow state. Then you need to log the events, how it is trying to take from the past memory if you are having some conversations happening on this particular operational dashboard. Okay. Or the specialized agent is trying to route from one outcome to the another outcome, then the state has to manage it very correctly and try to route it to a proper node. Okay. Node is nothing but executor. So it should try to, okay, I'll write it here something. Okay. You have some state, you have some route, you have router, okay, you have node. Okay. Nodes are the executors. Okay. Nodes are the executors. Routing is nothing but all the nodes, okay, which node has to execute, okay, or, or, or the orchestrator is nothing but a router here, okay, which is trying to divert or which is trying to point out which node has to execute, okay. So router is something that is going to tell to the node, execute this particular function, okay. So node is nothing but the logic is in place. So state is nothing but at that particular instant or at that particular session. Okay. So state will try to maintain that particular conversations very correctly by routing the routing to a particular or correct node or correct executor. So these are the three important things when it comes to, especially when it comes to managing the state and memory in the agentic mode. Okay. So state is nothing but your workflow, your flow of that particular execution, complete execution from start point to the end point. Okay. And you have to have your event logs where you will try to capture if something is getting failed. Okay. And you should have your checkpoints here. Okay. If something is getting paused, something is getting executed and which is very correct and validated for a review. Okay. Especially when it comes to human approvals. So you need to have your checkpoints at that particular time to revert back to the session at any instant. Okay. So these are the important step where how you manage the memory, how where you save your memory, and how dynamically your response of the user is trying to save in the memory, and how are you trying to divert it. Okay, so whatever the durable time that you mentioned could be interlinked to the checkpoint. Okay, so after this, if you want, if you are having the multiple servers or multiple your database is distributed across multiple databases, or your information is across multiple applications, then you can have your MCP and you can have your tool layer calling, or if you want to connect to the databases, you can connect here to fetch the relevant information based on the query. Okay, so you can do n number of things. Simply, I can tell here as tool calling. Okay, tool calling. Then at the end, okay, you can have your model layer. Okay, additionally, okay, where the entire information, once agent is taking a decision, or once you are routing to a particular node, or if the node is trying to call an API call, or if you're trying to fetch additional information from the database, you can have your model layer where you can try to execute or summarize the entire information to provide a proper response to user, or if you want a complete summary of the entire information of the applicant or the loan officer who is trying to approve the loan. Okay, so you can have your LLM calls. Okay, or you can try to you can do a number of things. I'm just trying to mention it here as LLM calls. Okay. Or you can say additionally, you can have your validator. Okay. You can have your validator. Okay. Then at the final stage, you will have your evaluation, model evaluation. Okay. So in this evaluation, you will try to provide all the criteria. How are you evaluating it, and how the decision is taken, whether it's correct or wrong. So you do all these things. Okay. So this is a regular or a general kind of layer or an architecture design, how you're going to execute it. The core engineering question comes here is, okay, so how an AI engineer designs a multi-agent system, okay, that remains stable, okay? Our goal is to maintain the distributed systems are not failing intermittently, because if you observe the entire workflow, one component is purely depend on the other component. So you have to remain it reliable, observable, recoverable, which should also have secure in place. That's where I took a financial example, and which is very accountable. Okay. So the multi-agent orchestrator, when it is trying to plan, if the plan itself is failed, okay, then do you think that the executor agent will try to execute the plan? No, right? So there is some interdependency from one agent to the another agent, where one agent should be accountable to provide a response to the another agent. So that's where the multiple calls, which should be very much in sync, okay, to coordinate among themselves. So this is what we have to maintain while we are designing an architecture. We have to keep this in our mind. Okay, so that's where it comes into the picture. Now, as I discussed, when it comes to a loan application, okay, let me reiterate this flow once again. Okay, so as a loan application, as soon as the request or the API is requesting, okay, let me rewrite this in a flow chart. Okay, so now you are opening your loan application. So you might be thinking which call would happen at what time. Okay, so now this is your loan application. What instantly happens here, you will have your API call. Okay, and user will try to upload the documents. Correct? User will try to upload the documents. Now this is the call as soon as you open your dashboard. Now this API call will try to call the gateway to process API gateway to process the request coming from this loan application, correct? So the request coming from this loan application. So now what this API gateway will try to do? First, instantly this API gateway will try to call the workflow orchestrator. Okay. This workflow orchestrator will try to execute. Okay. Now this workflow orchestrator, it is calling, then what are you going to write a logic saying that your events are logged here. Your events are logged here. Okay. Now this is the system. Now in this whole system, this plays a key role. Okay. Now this workflow orchestrator will try to have all the states present here. Okay. For that particular session. Okay. Now this state should route to the particular node. Okay. Route to the particular node to execute the logic. Okay. You have your API gateway, which will try to protect, and you have your event logs, which will try to log everywhere. Now you have your orchestrator layer. Now this is your orchestrator layer. Okay. Now this orchestrator layer should call multiple nodes. What are the multiple nodes that it is trying to call? The very first one is document intake. What does this document intake does? Okay, you have several execution or functions in place that will try to execute here. Okay, so you have your OCR technique. If your documents are having image data, then you have your OCR technique to parse the image. Or if you have your textual information, it will try to parse here and extract all the necessary information. Okay, and insert into your document database. Okay. Insert into your document database. Now this will have either your regular SQL database, or you can have your vector database to store all your vector images. Okay, you can store everything here. Okay, now this will call the workflow orchestrator. At the very first step, it calls document intake, and this document intake will try to insert all the necessary information in your database. Okay. Now this is a node, and this is the orchestrator where it is trying to route based on the state. And in this state, you have intent classification at the very first step. Okay. Now next you have, as soon as you are done with this job. Okay. Now this document intake, okay, it try to execute. Now let us keep this aside. Okay. Now you have your, we already thought while we are trying to design the workflow, we have specialized agent. So the specialized agent, what it tries to do, you have document intake, you have income verification, credit, fraud, compliance check, and risk and approval. So you have several things in place. Okay. Now, when it comes to income verification, okay, income verification. Now this is one of the node, right? So now what it does, this income verification has several documents like pay stubs, or earlier you have any deposits, or do you have any savings, or whatever the document verification that it has to do. So it will try to have all the necessary documents there. Okay. Now credit. When it comes to credit, now you need to go and call the necessary API to check your credit score. okay, where your bank is trying to depend upon. Okay, so there are several APIs that will go and verify your credit score. Now you call an external or an internal source to verify this credit score. Now, at the same time, you need to definitely verify something is related to fraud. Earlier, whether this account has or this defined what kind of fraud identities that is going to check with all the checks. It is trying to verify that. Okay. Now this is the another node. So now, all these four, how are they interdependent among each other? For example, I mentioned saying that document intake. As soon as the document intake happens, it will try to insert. These are the insertions happening from the user information. Okay. But income verification and all should have a necessary prompts that will try to fetch the relevant information from your databases, right? So now you have your income verification. Okay, there is some prompt. Okay, there is some prompt, and this prompt has to have some context coming added. Okay, and then you go and call LLM. Okay, and then this LLM will give you some response. Okay, as soon as you get your response, and this response should be validated, right? So how are you building the context? Okay, based on the income for the income verification. So you should build your context by fetching the information from the database, and you should have your similarities fetching from vector database. So you have two other things again. Okay, so this is the another service that is trying to fetch to build the context. Then your income verification will go with some prompt and it will try to summarize the information. And if it is trying to recommend or suggest some warnings or something, then it will try to classify it and it will try to provide you the response as part of income verification. Then where is the risk coming here? Okay, and where is the compliance coming here? And when are you saying the final approval? I'm only just talking about the income verification, but when you are having some response, this response could be interdependent among credit score, and the same response could be interdependent with the fraud. Similarly, the response coming from credit can also be interdependent on income verification and also could also be interdependent on fraud, right? So these are three interdependent, and these three additionally could these three additionally again depend on what's the risk of approval, at the same time whether these are following the compliance standards or not, and at the same time you have your final approval to conclude. Okay, to conclude. Now, this final approval is taken by an agent, okay? An agent with all the process and the combination of process interconnected, and finally, before it is validating at every stage, at income verification, credit score, fraud, and risk and compliance, and final validation done, and your final approval is done by an agent and send a feedback to human for review. Now, this reviewer, he is not aware of the policies. He is not aware of the policies and he is very new to the system. Let's understand a case where he's very new to the system. Now, what is he trying to go? Upon this final approval, he has to go and verify with the policies and come up with a decision whether this is risk or whether he can approve. So additionally, he will try to verify with the policies. Okay. And his review can be depend on whether he has seen the similar score coming from his past approvals in the bank. So he can have any additional check from pulling from the database. That's where your MCP comes into the picture, and he can have any other tool calling, and he can validate additionally by calling the LLM validators. That is nothing but LLM as a judge. One LLM will try to judge the other response coming from the another LLM. So that's how the entire traces could be. And yeah, with this, I just wanted to stop and open for the questions. But all our goal is to maintain the system very reliable and accountable from one call to the another call. Just I put all the things together to show uh, how the interconnectivity could be there, and how it should respond, how the response is important for the another input. So this is what I want to bring it up today. So just let me know. I'm open for the questions. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, please raise your hand so we can unmute. Let me see. There are 4 people. Yeah, and Nupriya, can you please unmute yourself? Nupriya, can you unmute yourself? Maybe Kishore, do you have any question? Kishore, Bhujan, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, Abhinav. Yeah, this is Bhujang. So I have 2 questions, Abhinav. The first one is, so what is the difference between MCP versus tool calling?
Yeah. So MCP, you can have multiple tools present inside the MCP. So that's where it is nothing but a tool calling, a modern way of tool calling. So both are same.
It's indirectly it's the same, right? So
Yeah, it's the
MCP.
same.
Okay. And then my second question is, um, so in order to build this whole thing, right? In order to build the whole thing, uh, so we need to have some kind of the front end UI. So what is it the Streamlit or something else? What is the recommended one to build the
Yeah,
front end UI? Mhm.
any UI. Nothing like Streamlit. Streamlit has some latencies, but other than Streamlit, you can go with React, Angular. Doesn't matter now. UI, anything that can have a good API calls and have good functionalities or good screens, that should be fine.
What is the second one you said? Duck?
React, Angular,
Okay.
any other. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, hey, I myself Raja.
Yeah.
My question is, I missed the initial first part when you session started. The flow you are talking about is workflow automation or agentic architecture?
Flow, I'm talking about workflow orchestrator you're talking about.
Mm. No, the entire
So
diagrams you
orchestrator.
showed, right? Yeah, that's what I'm asking. That is it's a workflow automation or is agentic architecture?
Yeah, the total it is known as agentic architecture. So
Mm.
in that you have orchestrators. When it comes to agents, you have orchestrator, which will route to a particular executor nodes.
Mhm.
So that's known as orchestrator of entire workflow.
Okay.
So
What?
automation,
Mm.
yeah. So the word of automation, as per my understanding, is a bit different. So automation is something that when from the user query to whatever the application it is, from the user query to the end of executor, you will have several steps to execute. Those are standard steps, okay?
Mm.
But orchestrator is someone who takes the decision
Mhm.
to route it to particular node. So,
Mm.
so that's the difference of automation.
Yeah. So one question I have. Uh, Actually, in some companies, they will allow you to use cloud code, but there is no cloud co-work. Some
Uh-huh.
companies, they will create their own MCP tools to use. They won't
Uh-huh.
allow open source MCPs, and every company has their own governance. So when this cloud is given to the teams, they will have limitations. So for learning standpoint, I was asking, I posted one question also. So
Mhm.
how you can train orchestrator on a product workflow when product workflow has dependencies with external systems like ERP systems and
Mhm.
database to fetch the data and validate the data in database. Bec- so is there is possible like we can still go with this orchestration approach engaging multiple agents?
Yeah, definitely you can go. But the thing is, it's all depends on the application latency. So, for
Mm,
example, now you have an application where you get the proper information every month on 15th, let us
mm,
think. Okay.
mm, mm,
But before 15th, if a user is trying to question, you will not get any response with the latest information because your batch will execute on 15th of every month. Let us think like that.
mm,
Okay. Then you have some dependencies there. Then you have to provide a proper response to that particular user. So MCP itself alone doesn't solve the problem
mm,
to call multiple tools, but having an additional validation layer, whether the judgment is correct based on the user intent, then you have a proper state and memory management, and that's where user will also have a proper satisfaction. So you can definitely implement. That's not a problem. So every organization, as you mentioned,
mm.
few companies are open to cloud. Few companies have a different agentic mode of execution. Now every engineer is having copilot access with different agents, right?
Yes.
So that's not a that won't be a blocker going forward. Definitely, they are trying to open the ports, okay,
Mm,
so that it would be easy for interconnections among the applications. Okay, so definitely going forward, it would be a better opportunity for everyone to work with the different applications by fetching the information and connecting to different databases to utilize to improve the productivity. But what are the, as I mentioned, when is that batch is executing, or when is the data getting migrated, or when you receive the proper information? So these are the things, time bounds that we need to take care.
mhm. Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you answered partially. The point I want to raise here is when we have in software industry, when we have automation adopted, and automation was
Mm-hmm.
extensively overcoming the manual testing, and automation was introduced because they have to go through this regression testing process for the release cycles, right?
Uh-huh.
When
Uh-huh.
that was there in the market and people are using that as industry standard,
Mm-hmm.
where this will fit when automation was used today in traditional
Yeah.
software development, uh,
Uh-huh.
what are the orchestration you said in engaging agents, will it be adding some enhancements to the automation flow, or it is can be used in the development cycle?
Yeah, it is there in the development life cycle. You can implement your regression testings here as well.
Mhm.
So, for example, now this is trying to route. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so it's a very good question that you're asking. Okay, So now this orchestrator is trying to route to the particular node, right? So based on the state, now this, how do you validate that this is trying to classify the intent very correctly and routing to a particular node very correctly? So how do you do that? So you do it by regression testing only. You understand it whether the turns are taken correctly or wrongly. How do you understand it? It's not a pretty straight one, right? So you have to classify the intent. If the intent classification is failed, then rest everything is failed. Okay. So every stage is very, very important. That's where I segregated these points from user query to intent agent retriever service. So the very first step, if the intent classification is failed, then you will not get a final response with the correct conversation happening. So, so that's where your regression testing comes into the picture, and understanding the intent of the application is very important while you perform the regression testing, whether it's right, trying to route correctly or wrongly.
Okay. One more follow-up question. This is the last question. So
Mhm.
when we are developing such orchestration or this multiple agent flows, knowledge base is the prerequisites. Knowledge base, creating knowledge base about the product or workflow.
Yeah, it is good to have. It is really good to have. Not about the workflow or not about the product, but knowledge base is more related to user and your policies.
Okay.
Yeah. So so knowledge base that we are trying to implement here, the document intake from the user, we are trying to take the document, and as per your company standards, you have as per that particular bank, you have your policies, and it should every verification should be happened as per the policy before an agent is coming for a final approval.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem.
Abhinav, I have few more questions if no one has any questions.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
My other question is like, this whole process, this whole orchestration, right? When you build this application, how do we debug? How do we debug the each step? Like, you suppose the response is coming, whether the response is valid or not, the validation part, right? So I just wanted to debug. How do we debug?
Yeah. Yeah. So before you, Raja was also asking the similar kind of question, but he's pointing about the QA automation. So regression testing is one of the way that you can see whether the calls are happening, the API calls are happening at every instant, and how are you trying to route. So that is one of the tests about workflow that you can perform. So the other test that you can perform here is related to the confidence. For example, when LLM is trying to respond to a particular question, okay, which is going as a context or a prompt, okay, as an input to the LLM. Now you build a confidence scores. How confidently it is telling that this is a response. So you maintain some threshold. You say that if it is 85% or 90%, you build a confidence and provide it back to the user, or bring a final approval with a confidence score. So that you will have some by looking at the response, you try to understand why it is trying to bring a final approval, and what is the percentage of confidence it has when it's trying to bring a final approval. So that's another way of looking at the response and verifying the response. The third thing is, if you have seen now, I took an example related to the loan approval. Okay. So loan approval, it's a standard procedure. If you observe that, it's a standard procedure. What is the standard procedure? Every user will try to provide the similar information, but numbers would be different, or the values could be different. But the keys are same always. Okay. There is no change in the keys, right? When you validate. Then somewhere you have your benchmark standards for every value. Now, how close your values, the actual applicant values are close to your benchmark values. So this is another way that you can validate. So as you understand, as we go deep dive into the use case, then we come close to that actually.
Okay. Say, my question around, like, suppose I define the parameters top P and top K. Suppose I have defined, like, I wanted to get only the five values from the LLM by the next token kind of thing, right? So I wanted to see what kind of those five values, how it is re-ranking. I wanted to debug that kind of stuff, like,
Yeah, so you have to write more number of logs, event logs. Okay. So based on the event logs, only you can see what is the response coming from every log, and if what changes, what at a functional level, what makes the change, so that your logs, you can trace all the logs and see at every step. So that's only the way that you can see, but you can't inside the LLM. You have to understand the how it is processing internally, but that is not because all you are using an API, right? So um, either you can see what is the input going and what is the response coming. Other than that, if it is related to vector database, you need to write in additional logs to see what it is trying to fetch and what it is inserting, whether the insertion job is correct, whether the retrieval job is correct. So you have to look based on the logs.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, hi, Abhinav.
Yeah, hi.
I have a few basic questions. If I understand correctly, MCP server is nothing like an API interface to an LLM. Can I define it like that?
API interface to LLM. Actually, so so imagine something like this. MCPs are only API calls, okay? But for every API call, you have a predefined description, okay? Now, when somebody is asking or somebody is sending a payload or somebody giving a prompt, okay? If the description is matching close to the prompt, okay? If it is 100% matching or 95% matching, then ideally one of the description will only match to the prompt. Not every description would match, right? So one of the description would match. Then that is going to call that particular API to fetch the information with a desired payload present in the prompt. If the prompt is not 100% matching, your MCP call won't happen. So you cannot, it works on LLMs, but you can't call it as an LLM. You can call it as only a modern way of function calling. But again, if you are not having your APIs registered in your tools, okay, then the API is never called. So, did I answer your question? Did I reiterate the frame correctly?
Uh, Kind of, but I mean, maybe I'm confused from my side. My question is, say, suppose if an API is not reachable, then normally we have an error throwing methodologies, correct? So in the
Correct.
same way, if MCP server is down, or if I define MCP server as interface of calling an LLM, then can I say that with one MCP, I can try to hit any model, or is it like it would be specific to the model?
No, no. So, yeah. So if your endpoint is using OpenAI, okay, OpenAI's LLM GPT-5, okay. So this MCP is only using this LLM endpoint. Okay, there is no other endpoint present inside. But you can change this GPT-5 to any other endpoint. It depends on your enterprise. Okay, whatever the LLM is being used in this MCP. Now, for you have your API one. Okay, one of the API, and you have your API two. You have API three. Okay, and API 4. All these are called as tools. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, your fifth API, you did not add it as a tool in this MCP. Okay. Now, every API has some description. Okay. Every API has some description. These are the descriptions what this particular API does. Okay. Now, these are all registered in your MCP. Okay. Now you have your prompt. So some of the description would match to your prompt. Okay. With whatever the payload. Okay. Now you have your payload with 10 keys. API 1 has only 10 keys. Okay. API 2 has 11 keys. API 3 has some 5 keys. Let us think like that. Okay. So this prompt one is for API 1. Okay. My intention is to call API 1 with this prompt. Okay. Now your prompt has certain information. Okay. Which is having some 15 key values. Let us think. Okay. Now, what are the required payload for API 1? For standard, if you want to call a standard API, then by default you send only these 10 key values, right?
Correct.
That is the standard one. But in your prompt, this is trying to give 15 key values. Okay. Now, what happens with respect to MCP? This will first call the LLM and try to understand which of this API is calling first. Then it will try to identify that, okay, you are calling API 1. It will try to identify. Okay. Once it decides API 1, then it will also understand what are the incoming request payload it has. So input payload, it has only 10 keys. Then you are sending 15 keys. Then by default, it will take only 10 whatever required here to execute it. And we will try to fetch that information. Now this API call could be a database call. Okay, database call from Azure. Let us think. This API call could be somewhere you have another local database. Okay, and this API call you want to call an application which is internal to your organization. Okay, and this API call could be your warehouse. Okay. Now, ideally, if you are building an application, you can also incorporate all these things. That's not a problem. But you have to have all the permissions to integrate all these APIs. But in MCP, you can expose this as one single endpoint. Okay, one single endpoint that is one single API call, and you can have your prompt, and you can have your one single API call, and you can call internally all these endpoints. So that's only the difference of MCP.
Yeah, I mean, an extension question to this. Now you said that my prompt has a 15 params, but whereas
Uh-huh.
first API requirement is 10 parameters.
Correct.
Does it mean that uh, I mean to say okay, let's keep this aside. Coming to the general question, like say, suppose if I give prompt to ChatGPT and the Claude, there are chances that I get a different answer. I mean, though the meaning is
Yeah.
same, I get a different
Mhm.
answers from both of them for a similar
Correct.
kind of questions that we
Correct.
regularly see it, right? So in that
Correct.
similar way, here also, is there a possibility that I mean, if I pass 10 parameters, there's a kind of answer which I'll be getting, and since other five parameters are
No,
getting missed,
no,
or
no, no, nothing like that. Because this API, when you're defining the tool, you will define the same value keys. Okay, there is no change in the keys. You say name. Okay, you say name. It will only take name value. Okay, you say something related to uh, age or gender. Okay, so these are the three values. Let me define it to three. These are the three values that is a incoming payload. Now your prompt has 15. Okay, it will only take three from your prompt. It will not take. This is nothing. Here you are not calling LLM. You are calling your predefined API only. But this LLM is helping you to call which API and to identify what is the incoming payload for that particular API. That's only the thing. So if something got failed with respect to LLM, then you will never call your API. Then your MCP is also failed.
Okay,
But
okay.
you will never know. You will never know what happened. Okay. Unless and until you write the logs to see. Okay. So that's only the trick. But other than that, that's what I'm saying. The same thing you can have all these APIs in your hard coded in your application, and you can ask user to send these input payloads also. But if you don't want such a scenario, if you don't want your user to overload with lot of input values, then he can have only a prompt, and this prompt will take care to call the API.
Got it. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Avina, can you take 5 minutes break and we will go over the course plan, and then the last 30 minutes, 15 minutes, we can cover the remaining questions for the remaining people.
Yeah. Sure. Karl.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you can take 5 minutes break so that Apurv can just go over the upcoming batch related concept. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Hey, Apurv, can you please? Yeah, 5 minutes only. So we just want to talk about our agenda for the May 15th batch. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, thank you all for attending today's session. So the recordings will be available in our YouTube channel. So this is the third week of our YouTube of our boot camp. So everything is uploaded in YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel KKR Gen Ai Innovations. So you'll be getting all the information with regarding to the upcoming course, and also like the previous batch recordings. Everything is uploaded here with the boot camps and everything. So try to like follow this page. And also with regards to the new batch and all the information, we'll post it in the LinkedIn channel. So also follow KKR Gen Ai Innovations LLC LinkedIn page. So you'll be getting all the information with regards to our trainings and boot camps, and also with regards to our the projects that we are working on. So and also the GPU that we have recently bought to our AI lab in Alpharetta. So try to get in touch with us. Try to fill out your details in the registration form. So we'll get in touch with you regarding all the course content and also the information that we have in our trainings. So yeah, so we are starting the new batch from the May, approximately from the May 15th or 16th. So we'll be going through all the 14 weeks with topics like we are covering from the foundations of AI with related to the foundations of Python and libraries that have been used for the generative AI, and also like the machine learning concepts, deep learning concepts, and also NLP. And we go on with the prompt engineering methods with the different strategies like zero shot, no shot, and also like chain of thought prompting styles, how to leverage them. And we teach how to fine tune LLMs with the agents, agentic AI frameworks like LangGraph, CrewAI, and also with we teach how to deploy them in the cloud like AWS Bedrock or Google Vertex AI or Azure OpenAI. And we teach some of the no code and the low code tools like Notion AI, ClickUp AI for the product and project management tools. And we have some of the design tools like Base 44 and Lovable. So you'll be like getting all this course curriculum to your WhatsApp or email. Once you like give your details in the registration form, we'll send you all this course content so that you can go over all this particular information. So we'll send this PDF to everyone, those who have given their details, and you can go through the information over there. And also, like once you enroll, we'll give all the project access with the different level projects that we have. and will give project access to the beginner level projects with the complete information that you'll be getting, how to implement them and how to leverage them for your portfolio or projects. With like every project contains with the problem statement and with the system architecture and step by step implementation guide how to implement them. So you'll be getting access to all these particular projects, and will guide you how to develop them and how you can add them to your portfolio or to your profile, um, so that it will be helpful for you to talk them in present them in the interviews, or you'll be getting hands-on experience once you go over to all these projects. So level 1 will be covering with a different 10 projects with the different domains, and you'll be getting exposure to all the beginner level projects, the real industry context and how to leverage APIs and good software structure, and everything will be given under level 1. Level 2 is kind of intermediate level that we will be teaching on. So you'll be working with the RAG pipelines, and also you'll be working with the vector databases, agentic workflows, automation, and also we have 10 projects for this one as well. So you'll be getting access to all these projects. And also we have advanced level projects that will be really useful for you. So even this one contains 10 projects with different different patterns like multi-agent orchestration, LLM fine-tuning, like LangGraph, agentic AI frameworks, cloud deployment, and full stack AI. Complete access will be given to you. And we have 10 more regular projects that you can work on. So that will be real-time business use cases. That will be really helpful for you to understand the tech stack and acquire them in your portfolio. So try to fill out the registration form that is been given in the chat. So we'll reach out to you offline to present you more details about the upcoming batch and also with the course curriculum. Yeah, so that's it from my side, and thank you, Abhinav. You can proceed with your remaining questions or any topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Apurv, for the presentation.
Thank you, Apurup. Can someone submit that new batch form? So new batch form is kind of if you are interested for taking the 100 days plan and to get all these project access or one-to-one discussion. So filling a form is not mandatory to join our batch, but still you can discuss with us one-to-one over the Zoom. You can clarify all your questions, and you attend all these boot camp classes. If you like it, you can join and associate with us. So training is one program. After training, we help you on the job support, we help you on the model training, we help you on the physical lab facility where you can come and practice in Alpharetta. So if you are working or attending classes over the Zoom remotely, yeah, we have like 5 to 10 classes planned for model training. So those will be, we share our model stuff and all over the GPU machine, and then that gives live experience. So we feel like all these things will help you in cracking your interview or in your career switch. So we request everyone to fill the form, even if you are interested or not interested or looking for next batch due to time schedules and all. So filling a form help you in getting the notifications and all. So I request everyone to fill the new batch form if you are seriously looking for career switch. So that is where we connect you individually, one-to-one meetings, and we clarify all your queries. So with that, I'm hand over to Abhinav. Abhinav, please take over and clarify rest of your class, rest of your questions, and then whatever the topic you left, please cover in next 15-20 minutes.
Yeah. So any further question?
Maybe we can unmute whoever is not answered, or maybe you can unmute after the subject is over.
Yeah, sure. Abhinav, do you want to proceed with the topic, or will you take the questions now?
Yeah, I want to take questions.
Okay. So I think we have Toluchuri. You can go ahead with your question. You raised your hand. Or we have Chandragar, you can go ahead with your question.
Sure. Abhinav, thank you for your time. Could you please show the diagram which you presented before?
Okay. Yeah.
So here, if you go to the right side, here. So what exactly you are storing in a vector DB? So you have a prompt. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So here vector DB, what exactly you are storing in a vector DB here, and also when you type the prompt, when you type it, so in the case of a even MCP description we write it, but sometimes the prompt even won't match with the description, and if you put in a intent file, even you put an intent and map the intent, also may not even the way question we ask, the way we enter into intent file may not match, or may not match with your MCP descriptions or all anything. How to handle this case? Like, is it a good idea to put a rag here so that enter the prompt so that it goes to the rag and those kind of thing?
Okay, I got your question. So let me differentiate few things. Okay. So you have your prompt. Okay. You build your context. Okay. And you have three different scenarios. One is direct LLM call. Okay. And you have vector database. Okay. And you have your tool calling. That is nothing but MC.
Yeah.
Okay. So the very first thing is, so these are all exposed as an application inside your application.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this prompt is coming from user. This is your user prompt. Now you have to build your context. How you going to build your context? First, the prompt has to, if there is something agentic in place, okay, agents in place, then you have to route it to particular node that can execute. Okay. So now in any of this situation, you have to build your context. Okay. So how are you building your context? Now, database is something that you are trying to get it as an additional source of information. Now, this vector database, what kind of information that you can store here? The very first thing is your document information. If user is uploading the documents, your document information is present in your database. One of the way is you can take the complete document, and that will have your more token usage. So you don't want to do that. In my previous session, I was talking about the same topic, that in always sending more information doesn't mean that you'll get a good response. Okay, you have to manage your context. That's where the token management comes into the picture, and that's where you're optimizing your cost. Okay. So other than that, what you do, you will do your similarity search. Okay, you do your similarity search to fetch relevant chunks based on embeddings in your vector database.
Sure.
Now this fetching the relevant chunks, okay, fetching the relevant chunks will go as a context, based on the user prompt. Okay. Now, if agents are in place, then you have additionally intent, and if you are not classifying the intent correctly, then you have to reiterate the things that can get the proper intent. But Other than that, if you look at, you have your relevant chunks additionally going as a context from your prompt. So from where you are getting from VectorDB. What kind of information you have? What are these chunks getting? How are these chunks getting created? From your document information provided by the user or whoever it is. Somebody has uploaded the documents and related to that particular applicant, and you are trying to fetch the relevant information. So that's the importance of VectorDB. Okay. Now,
Okay.
VectorDB plays an important role to fetch the additional information based on the user prompt. Okay, that's one thing. Now this context is now going to LLM. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is the same context can call tools also. Okay. Now your description, whatever the description that you are defining for any API in tool calling should match to this context. If you are routing it to your MCP. If your node is routing to LLM call, then your context plus your prompt, whatever the intent he is trying to ask, so you'll ask to LLM to fetch the relevant response. Now, any of the scenarios, it could fail, definitely. Not 100% you will not achieve at any point of time. There is no guarantee like that, right? So initially you will achieve 40%. Then you write your logs and see all the traces. Then you improve it to 60%. Then you additionally come up with another functionality placing in between among these three connections. Then you achieve 60%. You write your logs. Then something else is required other than whatever you have did till today. Okay. Then you understand, okay, by improving this 40 to 50%, you will try to understand what can be done additionally to get this to 80%. Okay. Get this to 80%. So when you write the logs and when you write the regression testing, and if you see that failures happening and all, I was also talking about the confidence score. Okay. Improve the confidence score in the response at every response. When you're routing to the particular node also, improve the confidence scores. So you will have a proper scoring criteria. And if you set the threshold, if it is matching 80% only, then go to MCP call, something predefined. Okay. Then you set some criteria, set some threshold. That way you will try to achieve 80%. Okay. So other than, so this is only the way that you can try to, make your application robust first. Okay. Then you come to the accuracy. Then you come to, after building the accuracy and you have your metrics, then you look into the user satisfaction in detail with the metrics. So not in a single phase you will achieve this, because LLMs are purely non-deterministic, and it all depends on how are you prompting and what kind of weights it is considering, and it has some attention mechanisms, and providing more information. It will not pay attention to the complete information. It will truncate the information, and it will only consider few number of tokens to give good proper results. So we have to take care of those things. That's where model, when you're changing or upgrading the model, the input token size is being increased. Okay. So that's where the importance of the model upgradation, and each model has its own competitors, right, in the market. So we need to choose a model which has a good attention, where it is paying good attention to the input tokens. That means nothing but the context.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
I
what
think
you are saying
also,
is, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
So what you are saying is, in the before vectorizing, before convert those embedding in, we have to prepare some kind of a document. This prompt, based on this prompt, call this MCP. Maybe the MCP have a thousand tools. So the prompt should match with a MCP tool. That means I have to prepare a document in such a way that, hey, this is the prompt. This is a kind of a description. This is a mapping tool, kind of a mapping. We have to prepare that document and index, meaning vectorize it or embeddings, put that into a vector DB. So the new prompt comes in, it will go to the vector DB, and based on the the similarity search, it will call the appropriate tool. So that is the flow you are recommending. And but let's say the
No, no,
prompt,
no,
same prompt comes
no,
in.
no,
I don't have to go
no.
again to the tool calling.
Sorry. Hold on. Sorry to interrupt you. No,
Mhm.
you are trying to intermix all these things. Do not do that. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So there is nothing that it should follow this procedure. Okay.
Mhm.
Your prompt is trying to fetch the similarities, then building the context, then going to LLM. No.
Mhm.
That's not a standard protocol. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So what am I saying is MCP tool calling is totally different.
Sure.
Okay, it's
Mhm.
totally different. Do not mix with LLMs.
Sure.
Okay, the context could be a input to your tool calling, and that will get decide which API to call. It doesn't mean that the information is coming from the similarity search and you're providing an additional documentation for that. Nothing as such. Okay, so you're getting somewhere there is some gap. Um,
Sh-
okay,
Sure, because
let's
the
say.
input is not matching with the prompt description. Say, I type the input, I know it's not going to the vector DB. I'm typing an input, I got the answer, but I change the input. Say, for example, show tables. Show me all the tables. So there is the extra word, I put me. It is not understanding that. So how do
No,
I make understand that?
so reiterate your prompt with an elaborated information.
Correct.
Write a prompt. Okay.
Mhm.
Now this is your prompt template. Okay.
Mhm.
This prompt template will have your input prompt coming very shortly. This is your input prompt.
Mhm.
Okay. Now this prompt template will have a standard prompt. Okay. This standard prompt says something like this. Please elaborate my input prompt. Okay. With all the predefined, say something like this,
Mhm.
predefined criteria where my application will be calling so and so databases, put all the key values here. Okay, put all the keys. Okay, now this will go and talk to LLM and it will reiterate your prompt very correctly, and this should match to your description. Okay, rephrase your prompt internally. That should solve your problem.
Honestly, that is not solving. So instead, that is not solving because the LLM is not understanding. LLM is doing some level. Instead, I want to put a RAG in between so that it will goes to the RAG and do the similarity search and give that input to the LLM. That way, I'm trying to ask the question.
Okay, this is my LinkedIn. Okay, let's connect
Sure,
over the LinkedIn
sure, sure. Thank
and
you.
let's
Definitely.
understand your problem.
Sure,
What is in depth? Okay.
sure, sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
And Abhinav, one more question from my side, Bhujang again.
Mhm.
So how do we say when we extract the document, like or parse the document and storing all these vectors into the vector database? So how do we extract? How do we get the metadata and store it in the SQL database? What is the mechanism to get the metadata?
Get the metadata. Sorry. From the vector database,
You
you are
know,
fetching the
suppose
metadata, or
no, I have some documents which I'm uploading as a part of the RAG system, right?
okay.
I'm uploading into the I do all this chunking process,
Mhm.
parsing, chunking, and embedding and storing that
Mhm.
vectors into the vector database. So this
Mhm.
whole context, where is this metadata comes into the picture, and how do we get that metadata? and what is the
Yeah,
use
so
of metadata in later point of time? I mean, how do we, in the retrieval process, how do we use this metadata?
yeah. So in the retrieval process, you only have your chunks. Okay. So metadata is something that which will hold, which will try to fetch your good similarities. So metadata is nothing but for that particular document that you have uploaded, you will have all the key values in your JSON object. So that's what it is, and metadata. Metadata will have complete information of that particular document, whatever you have uploaded, including user details. So passing the metadata will solve your problem of hallucination to an extent, okay, but it will not solve completely. So the importance of metadata is to fetch a relevant, proper similarity from the vector database. So metadata can hold that kind of importance, but it will not solve completely. And the other thing related to metadata is even though you send the complete information, okay, to LLM call, it is always good to send only the chunks, relevant chunk portion to the LLM call, because your metadata will deviate the track of the information that you're trying to fetch, or the information or the response that you're trying to look. So metadata can only help in a single point. Metadata can only help to fetch the relevant chunks properly based on the similarity chunks, but it cannot be utilized to send it to LLM.
Okay, okay, got it. So the follow-up question: suppose uh, I have suppose 100 documents. I did upload it into vector database, and I have some mechanism to upload the ongoing, the incremental documents into the vector database. And so how do we, suppose I have like in a couple of documents which is kind of obsolete, which is I don't need that information to be in the vector database. How do we process those, like, obsolete documents? What is our mechanism to remove it from metadata as well as from the vector database?
So one thing is, whenever you upload any document, you will generate a document ID. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, or if your documents are also following some standard procedure or standard naming convention, and you can try to fetch as per that naming convention. And the best thing is you can filter out by the timestamp. So you can use timestamp, and you can only fetch the latest documents that are inserted instead of utilizing the stale or unused documents over the period of time.
No, I didn't get the answer correctly. I know. How do I delete the obsolete document? You said that document
Yeah, based on the timestamps. So when you upload, how do you say that you upload all the documents bulkily, or like how are you doing it?
Say, for example, I uploaded today, and then after, say, for after 6 months, a couple of documents is no longer valid. I wanted to
Okay.
delete.
You have, yeah, you have your timestamp, right? So for every 6 months, you can delete those.
I do not even know when that it was uploaded. Yeah.
Yeah. So from today, if you look at past 6 months, you need not to have a particular date, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. From today, past 6 months, past 3 months, if you're not utilizing those documents, you can delete those.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe one. So one more last question, I believe. Is
Mm-hmm.
it the knowledge graph, right? So which one is more kind of like in use in the industry? It's a regular regular rack system. What you like what we discussed so far, like about they upload the document on all those things versus this knowledge graph.
Yeah. So knowledge graphs will definitely help in a more robust way to fetch or to connect from one node to the another node. Definitely, it will really help much more better than the regular RAG system. But at the same time, everything has its own importance. So you can't always go with the knowledge graph only. Your use case might be pretty straight. Then you have to go with something that is very straight and simple. Or if it is very complex, then you have to connect with interconnections. Then you have to go with knowledge graph. So everything has its own importance. Nothing. I can't tell that the knowledge graph will only solve every problem. It is nothing like that. Everything has its own importance. But
Okay.
it would be better if than the regular RAG.
So based on the use case, we need to choose which one to. Okay, got it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So, any further questions, or we can wind up for today?
I think we have a couple more, Abhinav. Just
Uh-huh.
Taluchuri, you can go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Abhinav. I have just
Yeah.
one
Hi.
question. We are doing a agentic flow, right? Workflow, right? Using the LangGraph. So, is there a
Mhm.
user will involve and give the some prompts and correct these flows, some learning so it is auto correct this agent. Hey, agent, you are doing something wrong. So you need to do like this. So, are we going to do like this in the live agentic flow?
Yeah, definitely. So, not every decision or every response will fall in place as per the user intent, right? So, definitely you need to have that validation in place. So, if a response coming from a LLM or an LLM agent call, so your prompt should be defined in such a way that um, you need a correct validation response, right? So apart from as soon as it responds something, then you also need to have some confidence score for that. So why you need a confidence score is the correctness of the response that is coming from the LLM based on your criteria set. And if it is saying 80%, I'm confident on that. Okay. Then it is purely depend on the input going to the LLM, right? So if your input is truncated or if your input is not so proper, then it will give 100% confidence also, because the input itself is deciding what is the confidence coming out. So you need to have that validations in place before input and after response coming in, and whether the decision taken, is it correct or wrong. So these are the things definitely you need to take care. So either with the regression testing or whatever the automation script that you're running, or if you want to trace it on your own, write additional logs to trace, to see the decisions at every step. That way you build the application with a proper decision maker.
So every day, so APIs are getting the everyday new data, right? So today, suppose if you take the MongoDB, so the data will be different for each parameter. So the validations we put, those are at the time the validations we know these validation for these data. So if we get the new data, so do we need to introduce the new validations?
Yeah. So for example, when you design your table, so values are always in place correctly. You are inserting into the table, right? So there is nothing. Then in your insertion job itself will fail, right, into the database. So
Suppose it is a NoSQL.
okay, yeah. So what? Yeah, I'm coming to there. So your insertion job is correct now. Okay, that's one of the validation. That means there is no failure in your insertion job. Now retrieval job. So you do your retrieval query. What is the necessary information that you want to fetch? Okay. So the retrieval query, you retrieve the information and you are fetching the relevant information. Okay, that's the next step. Okay, there is no failure happening. Now, when you call LLM with the particular information, okay, either you're summarizing or you're passing the information or to the next step, whatever it is. Okay, if your retrieval job is correct when you're fetching from the database, if it is properly fetching the values, then there is nothing wrong. But when you're summarizing the values or what is the next step that you are getting decided, you definitely need to have a validation layer, whether it is correct or wrong. So there is no, whenever, see, by default, think like this. You have to write a log or you have to have a validation layer for every input and output of your LLM calls. So why? Because you have to trace it at the same time. You can't rely on the response coming from the LLMs because it is interdependent on prompt. It is interdependent on the data that you are sending. It is purely depending on the response coming at that particular instant of that particular context or prompt you are sending as an input. So there are few factors and there are parameters also which plays an important role. And your model also plays an important role. If your model is a reasoning model, you get a different response. If your model is an instant model, you get a different response. So there are several parameters that you need to also consider. So definitely validation should be there in place.
Hi, Abhinav.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. Can you just share the screen one more time, the architecture that you had? I have a quick question. So you have the vector DB, right, for the semantic search?
Yeah. Okay.
So my question is, if you scroll to the left, in the multi. So is the vector DB empty when the user arrives, or is the vector DB already loaded with the document?
Okay.
Because
So
one quick question was, I see to the left you have a UI, right? The UI calls the API gateway. So in the UI loan application, where probably the user logs in and then uploads his documents related to the loan. I mean, this is a loan approval. So probably he might be uploading his pay stubs or something.
Yeah.
So my question is this a near real-time application where when the user comes in and uploads the document, that's when the ingestion pipeline kicks in and then it parses the uploaded documents and then chunks it, indexes it, embeds it, and then loads it into vector DB for the semantic search by the LLM? Or
yeah, correct. So whatever you're saying is correct. Okay. So now user logs in. Okay.
Right.
So for now, as soon as user logs in, you have several questions. You ask name, you ask all the details,
Yes, so
regular
there is a
details.
form.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, regular form. Okay. Now there is a section called upload documents.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now as soon as you provide upload documents for that particular section. Okay. Now there is something your database sitting here.
Right.
This is your vector DB. Okay.
So that is
Now,
empty
as soon as
when the user arrives then, right?
yeah, as soon as he uploads the document, okay,
Right.
you will have your document, okay, doc ID getting created in the backend, okay,
Right.
and
Right.
you say here to the user it is processed, okay. You say to the user process, and this doc ID will have in your okay in your vector database. Now, this doc ID will have the correct mapping of your document parse text and then you will have your chunks created for that doc ID and then you have your vectors embedded, okay, and if you want your metadata, whatever the JSON objects that you want to create, and then you have your timestamp, okay. create a timestamp. Now this doc ID will be in another doc ID for the different document, but the same doc ID will be there for all the chunk IDs. Now, when user is trying to provide all the details, and if you want to have your income verification or something, then your prompt will go and fetch the relevant information for that particular doc ID for that particular user ID.
Okay, so this is I had a question because a lot of users will log in and upload, and when they're applying for the loan, right? So for every user, if this ingestion pipeline is triggered, just to load,
Yeah.
will that have any scalability issues? Because
Yeah.
I thought this is a two-step
That,
process where the user already uploads it like few days before, so that the vector DB is already populated, and then in the UI it says now you can go ahead and apply, and that's what I thought. Like this is real time.
no, yeah, this is a real time, and he can delete it. If he deletes, then there should not be any document present in your vector DB. That should be scalable.
Okay.
So there is nothing predefined. You process today and then come back next day. There's nothing like that. That way it doesn't work for the user, right? So user want everything very instantly.
So and also I see you're using the SQL and vector DB.
Yeah.
So is this for a hybrid?
Is this for a hybrid?
The reason is
Nothing like that.
okay.
If you want a user information, for example, the regular sessions, okay,
Right.
you no need a vector DB for that, right? You need a normal SQL DB to insert regular key values. That should be fine. Or you can put directly everything dump into the metadata also. That is also fine.
Okay.
I just mentioned it because you have multiple tool callings also since because in this is something purely coming from my mind at that
I think
instance.
got it. The reason is I
Yeah.
think in the context you had two arrows there, right? So before you give it to LLM, you're getting So I thought like in a scenario where when the user uploads his pay stubs, maybe the vector DB search returned a pay stub from 2022, maybe due to an error, but in the SQL database he has the current salary, which is probably 100,000, whereas 2 years back his salary was 80,000. And if the context picks, I thought like maybe the agent is smart enough
Yeah.
to override, like prioritize. Hey, the
Yeah.
SQL database is current, and then let me send that. Otherwise, the loan will get disapproved or something. So
Maybe that could be a scenario. You are absolutely correct. There is nothing wrong.
okay.
If we are also considering the past information, then your agent would tell that I do not have the latest information. Do you want me to consider the past information with so and so date or year?
Okay.
So your agent would respond in such a way by fetching the information from SQLDB. That
So
could be a scenario. There is nothing. See, how are we designing the workflow can be changed at any instant, but um, how reliable it is what only the consideration that we need to take care.
Got it. And also, I see these income verification, credit scoring, and fraud are three different agents which are probably in parallel, right? Probably
Yeah.
So if that is the case, in the workflow orchestrator, he's maintaining the global state. And when you make these income, credit scoring, and fraud agent run in parallel for a specific user, we cannot guarantee the order of them coming back with a response. Either one of them can complete, or both of them can complete the same time. So when they try to update the global state, would there be any global state corruption or some kind of race condition? And how do we handle that? Like,
Yeah, so until and unless, see, these three are interlinked, right? So
okay.
now let's consider A, B, C. Okay.
Right.
Now the combination, go with the combination. A is interlinked with BC, B is interlinked with AC, and AC is interlinked with AB. Okay. So now all these are important for you to come to a conclusion. Okay. Now the combination, or you will have an additional prompt unless and until ABC are completed, you will not go into the further step. Okay. So now if AB are completed, or your decision is purely depend, I don't need much of the information related to income, but I want to primarily check the fraud, which is very important for me. Okay. Depends on how are you taking the decision and how are you validating. You can have your individual prompts for ABC to validate them, or the combination of prompts, or in a single prompt, you can have all the three together to have a validated done.
Not the
But
validation part, but updating the global state. Like, so
yeah,
in
yeah. But the response coming from each state, until and unless they are completed, you can't take it as a forward step.
oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because everything is important, right? It's something the decision would bring loss to the bank or to the user. You know, the decision, if you're rejecting the loan to a user, user will definitely, that same applicant will go and get loan from another bank, correct?
That's a loss of business.
So by default, yeah, sorry.
That's a loss of business. Like, so the idea is you want to
It's a
make
loss of business. Both the parties should have benefit.
right. And
Okay.
also, right, and
So,
also from a regulatory compliance perspective, because this is a very complex architecture, right? So when the system makes a decision whether to approve a loan or disapprove a loan for a given user, uh, would there be like a milestone explanation record wherein for audit purposes we can go back and say for this why was this user disapproved, and that particular record will show okay, income verification failed, credit scoring and fraud completed. Does the AI explain in like one or two sentences why it was approved or denied, and that is stored so that for regulatory purposes you have everything? Because
yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, it is good to store the reasons for the complaints and regulations. It is very good to store. See, and now tomorrow this user can visit back. Okay, the same user. Okay, user A. Let us think. Okay, so user A can come back later tomorrow. Okay, now, with a manual process, you will not have any understanding why it got rejected. Okay, earlier stages. But if you have the reasons getting stored for the complaints and the further usage, then you need not to do the similar, whatever the process that you are doing. Tomorrow, you can only, as soon as you step in with his whatever the ID that he is providing to us, then you will have a detailed summary of that particular user very instantly saying that in so and so month and year he already applied and this is the status of his loan. Okay. Now you can take further steps. Now whether he is applying for a new ones or the old ones, then it will directly link to the policies and the regulations that we stored as per the complaints, and it will provide you a detailed information with that particular user. And this will not waste his time or the organization time to provide the insights properly to that particular user.
okay, if you go, if you scroll up, if you scroll down, I think at the top you somewhere mentioned events. Like for every stage in the pipeline, in this,
Yeah,
yeah, event logs. I thought, so these event logs are somewhere stored in the database or something, and you can let an LLM when the query comes in, and you can go and then collate all the event logs and then come up with a consolidated picture of why it was approved or rejected. But instead of that, I think you probably store a complete record at the end instead of constructing the complete state by reading all the events. Maybe after the entire process, you store a complete record itself, one record saying, hey, this was approved or denied because of these reasons, instead of like constructing from events, I guess.
Yeah, so event logs, there are different way of understanding events. Okay. So one is for every step, that means every action of a user, you will log it. Okay. And for every action, what is the response? What is the input, output? Okay. So
Okay.
this is one of where you trace at every step. This is a user action related events.
Right.
There is something that you're also talking about audit.
Right. All your agents, like what decisions they made.
Yeah. So Yeah, agents, what decision they make, input, output, okay, everything, what failed and everything, okay, that is one of the things. Audit logs are something related to user. How many times is he visiting? At what point is he stopping? So, and why is he stopping? What is the reason beside that? And how many times he is trying to log in? So something like that. Now today he might be uploaded one document, it got failed. So tomorrow he'll correct the document and he'll upload it. Whether it's a genuine document or a fake document, you really don't know, right? So it could be any of the situation. So that audit log will help you to trace it back at the same time. So this is the another way.
Right.
And the third one is enter application logs.
Right.
Okay.
I think this is more important, like your agent
Yeah,
logs,
correct.
each agent, how they made the decision, because tomorrow you can tune them, correct them in case if they are,
Correct.
making wrong decisions. I think that.
Correct. These are the three different ways which will provide you the insights or reasons, the purpose or the failure situations or the success scenarios also. So everything comes into the picture with the logs.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah. And good questions actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Satish. I want to check. My whole environment is basically on Kubernetes based one. So
Okay.
the my question is totally there are like what I from the documentation I see there are two kinds of agents. One is regular agent and one is K agents. My first question is, are these both same, or how enterprises prefer one on because I'm my question is how enterprise prefer, from your experience, whether they prefer going for a regular plain agentic framework which has LangGraph, Langsmith, and these things, or people use mostly the agentic container orchestration form. Which one the people choose most? uh, it's not more technical, but at a high level, just we want to understand at that.
So for a POC or if your users are very less number, okay, then you can go with a regular one that is more than sufficient to satisfy your less number of users because you know what is their intent and you can capture their intent and it's very easy to convince the less number of users and depends on the use case and importance it has at the same time. If not, you go with the second option that you have with the orchestrator level, and that will give you more robust solution very instantly. So, but I recommend start with that, and then because you can't spend lot of time in the development stages only. You need to show something, and then you in iterations you develop it in a robust way. So my suggestion would be in that way actually for especially for enterprises.
Okay. One question on same point is um this LangGraph, LangChain, and the tools you are specifying, this all tool set which is used for machine learning models and all. So all these are these means the ecosystem which you are telling on this whole thing, is it git convertible, or like is it maintain the state like single source of truth in git, or is it like branching system and all it will apply, or is it according to each tool set you configure it differently?
No, it will maintain the branching system. Yeah, you need not worry about the configurations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Abhinav, we have 5 to 6 people more in queue. Do you want to go ahead or do you want to connect with them offline to verify
Yeah.
their names?
Can we connect with offline? It's too late for me.
Yeah,
Sorry for
that's
that.
fine. Yeah, we have few people. Yeah, but try to connect with him through LinkedIn. Those who have any queries, he will answer you offline. I think it's almost 2.5 hours. So thank you so much, Abhinav, for the session and queries. Nice session today. And also, if
Thank
you
you.
have any queries with regards to the next batch, like fill out the registration form, we'll reach you offline. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah.